You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-commerce strategy, technology and CX-focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gedd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-commerce strategy and leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify. It is our annual State of the Industry review, which sounds rather grand. So Paul and I today are going to look at what we've seen over the last 12 months, pick out some of the key trends, developments in e-com, what's had a material impact on e-commerce brands, how they're trading, how they work. We'll look at things as well, what might have been overhyped, because there's always a tendency for hype to exist in the e-com world. And we're going to focus in predominantly around B2C, D2C e-com. We've got a couple of B2B podcasts coming up soon, and we don't want to conflate the two because actually it'd be almost impossible to cover everything across every model into one single podcast. So that is you're going to get from it. So we're going to look at things like the overall trading, how's it been, and some of the regional variations. We'll talk about AI product discovery, how that's shifting, the agentic side, loyalty's been big, data intelligence, social commerce, increases in automation, paid media stuff, etc. Those are kind of the big topics. So, Paul, anything you want to add, or should we get cracking?
Nope, I don't think so. Let's get going.
Cool. And anyone who's listening, I'd love to hear what your views on the state industry. When we post it on LinkedIn, do add comments or do reach out to us directly. But I guess, do you want to start? We work with different sets of clients, so we have probably quite similar perspectives in some respects, but different like data points in others. Do you want to talk about how overall 2025 has been? What's the mood in the market?
Yeah, so I think two big things that are obviously going to come up in this episode are tariffs, which I think changed the trends a little bit. And I think that had a pretty big impact on a lot of our clients that need to grow in the US, or the US was a big market for them. So I think that would be one. And then the other obvious one is AI, which I don't think we'll be able to not talk about for a pretty high proportion of this episode. So I think they're the two things. I think other things that have happened this year, or not other things that have happened, I think overall, I don't think it's been as bad as maybe a lot of people thought it, or maybe the H2 hasn't been as bad as a lot of people thought it might be. I think Black Friday is really interesting for our clients. So we put a lot of time into trying to understand everything. Week before that weekend was not looking good at all, particularly the UK, and a lot of people are pretty worried. And then over the 4 days is a really positive peak for most of our clients. A lot of people were pretty significantly up. So I think there's obviously some like behavioral changes there, particularly in the UK, but also the US. And I think the US is performing pretty well again for a lot of our clients. Main focuses right now, I think, are pretty similar. So media, scale and acquisition, understanding profitability around all of that stuff, and like broader marketing. I think brand is still a big focus for a lot of our clients. And I think some of that, like a couple of years ago, one of the early call outs, or like one of the main kind of narratives when ChatGPT and some of the kind of content focused models, when they came out, I think a lot of people thought that creative and photography and some of those areas would be one of the biggest impacts from like reduced budget perspective. And I think we've still seen the opposite. I do definitely think those areas will be impacted, but yeah, that's still a big focus. I think that's it really. I mean, again, I feel like I'm tunnel vision sometimes, and you often call me out for that, because I just live in a bubble, because we work almost entirely with kind of fashion and lifestyle. So I'd imagine there's a lot of businesses that aren't just focusing on like creative and brand and all of that kind of stuff. But I think that's they're probably the big trends for us this year.
Well, I think we all live in bubbles, don't we? And this is why we do these podcasts, because then we get different viewpoints in it. And yeah, I work with a different set of clients to yours. And I guess my client base this year has been quite eclectic. It's not fixing to any particular vertical. It's across like pet, home, furniture, jewelry. So it's quite varied. I guess what I've seen is, I think it aligns with you then, broad trends. Tough trading. First half was much harder. There was a lot of pessimism. people's margins were being hit left, right, and centre. And there's different reasons for that. You're right, there's the global, the macro impacts like the tariffs, which then create costs, which retailers couldn't pass all the cost on because they'd be completely price uncompetitive. I saw a couple of people pause on cross-border expansion as a result of that to try and understand what the model going forward would be and how profitable that could be before they could commit to either continuing in a market, expanding a market, or launching in new markets. And I've definitely seen greater confidence coming back towards the end of the year as people plan into 2026. Cross-border has been a big focus for a lot of people I've been talking to this year, but looking a little bit further afield. And people who previously had shut down on expansion to Europe since Brexit because of the red tape, the costs, the issue with all of the duties, taxes, etc. But actually, because the UK is becoming a tougher and tougher market, and profitability challenges, etc., then they're seeing Europe again as a strong market. I've seen more people go back or increase investment in key markets like Germany, France. US, my clients are less, not that they're not active. Fewer of my clients are as active as yours are in the US market. It's obviously US from a fashion and AI and premium brand point of view is a big market. Let's go dip into AI now, because the other bit was AI, and we talked about this a lot, haven't we? AI is fundamentally shifting the market in terms of tech companies and where they're focused, in terms of retailers and how they're thinking, and shoppers and how they're behaving. That's indisputable. But the hype about how you have to completely re-architect your business to be an AI first technology, there's a lot of hype and misleading information about how people need to throw their money in on agentic, etc. So I think we'll pull that apart. But the big one for me is AI product discovery. So I'm separating this out deliberately. It's not agentic. It is the evolution of the LLMs, the chat GPTs, from a very low base, albeit, but with very large customer base and potential, where people are starting to ask more questions and do more research and information gathering and discover and find products, not just general information, within those environments. And it's then sending people into websites. I think I'd seen the amount of traffic was typically between 0.2% to 1%. Well, it's increasing. The interesting stats come out of the holiday season is in November, AI-driven traffic to US retail websites surged by approximately 760%. That's from Adobe. So that's obviously off a subset of sites. But SimilarWeb also estimate conversion rate for ChatGPT referrals, which is obviously referrals is a very small percentage of overall traffic again. But they was seeing data that ChatGPT referral conversion is 11.4% versus an average of 5.3%. That I found very interesting, that it's referring good quality traffic, not just very high funnel stuff.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
I think the interesting thing with this, I think the impact of the LLMs and ChatGPT in particular is way bigger than the numbers suggest, because I think I look at like how I use ChatGPT, and I will regularly use ChatGPT for research, and then end up on Google. And I think that's a very common journey. And I think a lot of people do that rather than actually discover the final product. So they'll maybe get themselves to a point where they can then use Google Shopping or then go directly to a brand or whatever. I personally think, so we've been monitoring the referral traffic from ChatGPT for at least 6 months, and it is definitely going up. And this year for us, it was, I think, peak was like 1100% up year on year. But I think we still don't see that much direct revenue coming from it. But I think the really interesting thing at the moment though, and obviously we'll come on to talk about how everyone is selling services around AI visibility and everything else, but going back to that point around visibility. I think it's almost impossible to measure the impact of ChatGPT right now, I would say, just because the proportion of people that are buying within ChatGPT or going directly from ChatGPT to a site, I still think is very low in the grand scheme of things. And I think and there's so many tools now that essentially provide reporting on your brand, the brands that are being cited, sentiment, all that stuff. But realistically, that data is just coming from millions of, queries to the LLMs. What I think is going to be very interesting is when these, particularly ChatGPT, releases an analytics dashboard or some level of kind of search console equivalent. And you can start to get a bit more visibility around the impact. And actually, we talk about ChatGPT, but I mean, the really interesting thing now is Google's recent development in this space. And I think AI mode is getting really good. And at the weekend, I was doing some tests across a few areas, ChatGPT versus Gemini, and Gemini kind of embedded via AI mode. And I actually think Google's results are way stronger, and actually the experience of having some of the data within the results pages is really good. And the thing that I really like about Gemini over ChatGPT is like the formats of content is a lot broader. And that embed a video result, that embed images like way more often. Embed kind of third party results within listings. And I think that whole piece is really interesting. I think it's obviously super early. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's saying the right things around. You should be keeping an eye on it. But I think the really interesting thing will be, how Google progresses the proportion of Google searches that end in a transaction where AI is present, and the kind of measurement of all of this.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree. I think Google's got the strongest opportunity to commercialize this. That ChatGPT is obviously noticing this because it's adding instant checkout, creating the deals with Etsy, Shopify, Walmart. It's trying to build out and bring the purchase point into ChatGPT because it knows full well that Google's AI mode is catching up fast, and actually Google has the early market advantage, right? It's got the buy-in, it's got the investment in the UI and the algorithms and the relevance, etc. So I think it's really, I think just anecdotally, and we're going to touch more about in the next podcast we're going to do one about trends for 2026, which is the counterparts. This is where we see this evolving. So we won't get into too much. But yeah, I guess just anecdotally, and I know it's not just generational, but I see within my clients, and even within agencies I work with, the younger generation, so like the recent graduates kind of upwards, their early 20s, the default behavior is ChatGPT. It's not, let me have a look in Google. It's straight into GPT. Now that might evolve into Google, it might evolve into another tooling. But it's really fascinating to see that the mindset, and I'm seeing this with my kids growing up. So that's where we think the state of AI and product discovery element is. We're going to cover agentic in the trends of 2026 because I think agentic is nascent and there's going to be a lot more growth in that area next year. So we don't want to duplicate. But loyalty, let's pick out loyalty, Paul. I know it's something that yourself and other members of the Vivant team, like Connors, and you were at a Represent launch earlier this week talking about it. There's been a big strategic shift this year away from just points to better understanding of what drives customer relationship, what drives retention, and what adds value to customers, and how you kind of build out a loyalty program that ties people into the brand values. That feels like a much more strategic lens that's going on. And I think Paul Smith and Represent are two of the great examples. So where do you think the state of the industry is on loyalty at the end of 2025?
Yeah, and I think it's really hard to leave that AI one behind because I feel like we could talk about that for like weeks. But obviously we'll come back to it in the next episode. So we'll leave that one. I think loyalty is really interesting because I feel like loyalty has been a trend for a long time. I think these high profile launches, and I think Hugo Boss was probably like the real kind of first program that made a lot of brands like wake up to like some of the, like how you can kind of build brand and community into loyalty, like how it can be like a really strategic kind of omni kind of understanding of kind of journeys and helping to identify customer behavior across channel, all of that kind of, that whole piece. I think they were really early to it. And then I think that's kind of trickled down. I think one of the things that's happened more recently is the vendors have really stepped up. So I feel like, so both Paul Smith and Represent use Ontavo, who are like, strengths and weaknesses overall, I'd say. Good vendor, very flexible. But like historically, you probably would have needed to use Ontavo for a lot of the stuff. Whereas you look at like someone like Revo in the Shopify space and like some of the stuff that they're releasing. And I feel like, I think overall, I think that's been a big part of this. Like some of the cool stuff that you can do with loyalty that would have needed hundreds of thousands of carbon hours is now a commodity. But I think overall, like most of our clients are doing something with loyalty. I think the thing that's happened this year is people have been a bit more creative with it. So we've got a couple of clients now who essentially have a basic freemium membership style program with incentives. And a lot of the goals around that are like data collection and personalization. And then they've got a premium, paid for plan. And like that's got its own kind of strategy behind it. And then we've got, lots of clients where, you know, it's not points based and, it's very branded. And equally, we've had other clients that have, been a bit more creative with it. So I feel like overall, loyalty has just got broader. I've said for a while that I feel like there's a new word needed for it because it is like a lot of brands just want to measure engagement. A lot of brands want to use traditional loyalty levers and like additional kind of trading mechanisms, and like their goals are, you know, purchase frequency, lifetime value, etc. But there's also a lot of people that, are doing far broader things with loyalty for data collection and customer engagement and feedback and whatever else. So I think it's been the year of loyalty for sure. It's been some amazing programs. People are being a lot more intentional around how they position loyalty, signpost loyalty, how they use incentives beyond just transactional benefit. I think that's been an interesting, like it's been like the heart of retention, I feel, for like this year in particular.
Yeah, I just think more and more businesses have realized that they can't carry on with just generic rewards for people or at second purchase, their purchaser. They've got to make people understand there's a real value to commit into a long-term relationship with a brand, and it's not just about a discount. It's whether it's exclusive product drops or it's unique content or it's events, or it's contributing to values that people buy into the brand, like charitable donations or environmental. There are so many facets to it, aren't there? 100%. A good call out on the tech, actually. I remember at the start of the having a conversation with a few platforms about the multi-currency stuff for people who want to do loyalty across different stores. And actually, the default bit used to be you set up a program like £1 is a point, and that's your base currency. But then when you have expansion stores, it then basically uses a conversion to create it where you can't set it per currency. And actually that's starting to move on. So some of the fundamental mechanics for doing it at a more global scale are becoming simpler in tech. Yeah. It's a nice call out. So that's loyalty. Let's get on to, I wanted to do data intelligence. And I know that I think you've got a much better handle than I have on this talk. So we've got because my point on the data intelligence was that what I'm seeing is there's a bit more maturity coming into the SME market. This is predominantly around the tech stack, around data analysis, data measurement, data tracking, all of those things. I'm seeing an evolution to more hybrid set of tooling rather than somebody who might have just GA4 and ETM set up and then a simple visualization tool, or they put it into like BigQuery for an analytics focused person. But so smarter use of data layers, real custom. So whether this is using a specialist like an Elevar or it's a custom pixel that's being written by a data specialist to then implement and create all the custom tracking that you want and need across core site, marketing partners. And we're obviously seeing Josh, for your co-founder, and the recent podcast I did, one was talking about how Northbeam, for example, has just signed an exclusive 30-day impression share data with Google. So you've got all of these relationships building to give better data to enable people to make smarter decisions. And I'm seeing, greater investment in tools rather than just trying to do something off a free version of GA and then have somebody do some funky stuff in a lookup query database.
I think I would actually say second half of this year, like reporting and data has been the biggest trend and thing that's become important to our clients. And I think a lot of that is because they're spending more than they've ever spent on marketing, more than they maybe want to spend on marketing to like hit targets, everything else. And I think because that's become such a important area of these businesses, I think it's then having a knock-on effect on other departments, and there's more question marks over like, what's driving profitability at different levels, and just everything. Like, there's questions from finance, merch, e-com teams, everything else. And I feel like, as you said, I think a lot of our clients for a long time have been using e-com platform for transactional data, GA for like marketing, kind of channel mix data, campaign, behavioral stuff. And then that's probably it. And maybe their finance team will have like a BI where it'll be more like, again, the kind of e-com data, like returns data and like merch data, that kind of stuff. Whereas now, I think a lot of our clients are investing a lot more in like building a set of reports and like a BI platform that everyone is aligned on the valuing of things, the metrics being used, the KPIs in different areas. And I think it's probably a split. So we've been working quite a lot with Demo, which is a tool that I really like. We've got 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 clients now using them. Great tool. I think what they're trying to do is what is a real industry need. So forget the paid side, because that's like Josh's side and he definitely understands that more than I do. But I think overall, like, they're essentially trying to pull all your data into one place, be very opinionated around traffic, and move away from kind of using GA for that, and have their own kind of maintained opinionated approach to what is a session, what is a unique user, etc., etc. And then they're trying to essentially move like GP1, 2, and 3. So essentially profit, post, kind of profit as base level, profit post fulfillment, and profit post fulfillment and marketing, into like the core of a business's KPIs, reporting, everything else. And then they just built a really nice way, like similar to the old GA, just a very usable and intuitive way of kind of managing this data. So I think that is something that the industry's needed. And I think they've got a lot of potential to build something that could go quite mass market. And I think Triple Whale have built an equivalent with like some of the marketing data in the Shopify world. And then I think you've got the other clients of ours that have basically just hired a headcount and invested, I don't know, 250K in a reporting stack with the same goals essentially. But I feel like just overall, there's a lot more investment in reporting, and there's a lot more like alignment in this area than I would say a year ago. Probably 20% of our clients had this type of solution in place. Now it's like 80, and for whatever reason. And there's other tools as well that people are buying as like their initial first step towards this. But yeah, I feel like just reporting and data, and I actually think a lot of this is driven off the back of things like tariffs, things like periods last year where trade's not looking great. Everyone's like, fuck, like what's going on with what's the behavior on site? And everyone's like, oh, actually our GA is terrible. Or people will be like, oh, what's changed from a channel mix perspective? And it's like, oh, we don't trust the data in GA. So people are then investing in, trying to have a bit more clarity across the board.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's that bit, and it linked to that, it's basically the technology is there to enable that level of granular analysis, because you've got smarter tech which has AI capabilities built into it on top of automations and business rules that you can put in, which will allow you to be able to interrogate it for very specific questions, or it will make recommendations to say, you are this particular campaign, this particular product in this particular market is losing you money, versus you're underbidding on X and it's highly profitable. You should reinvest money there. So yeah, better to, I mean, you've mentioned a few of them. There's new tools coming out all the time. Blot Out was one that was flagged to me recently, which is quite a recent one around first party data accuracy. So I think one of the big challenges is knowing how to choose your tech, which is why you need to have somebody who has ownership of this and client.
I was just going to say, sorry, and also, because I think the other thing that I've noticed is a lot of the friction is around metrics and like what's actually important. And I think it's all kind of tied together around like what you trust, what you don't trust. Yeah, like because I feel like, in fact, I'm not going to get into detail. We'll talk about it in the next episode. Carry on.
Yeah. This is why we're flowing this one and then the Trends 26, because they dovetail quite nicely, because some of the state of the industry stuff feeds into predictions next year. There's our teaser to listen to the next episode, everybody. The final one we're going to pull out, and we're not meaning that we've done an exhaustive a digest of the industry, because there is so much. You could probably spend hours and hours doing this and everyone would fall asleep. The last one I want to tease out was social commerce, because for a long time in social commerce, the conversation was around Instagram, the meta universe. All I've heard from most of my clients this year about in terms of growth and investment in not just campaigns, but also like content, is around TikTok and TikTok Shop. I mean, I saw the stats recently that TikTok Shop's now the size of eBay. GMV hit 19 billion in Q3. eBay's was about 20 billion. But yeah, there seems to be a refocus in terms of prioritization around needing to be on TikTok from a content point of view, and needing to be on TikTok Shop from a product point of view. Do you see the same, or do you see it kind of different in your customer group?
I think I see it differently. I think, but I think TikTok Shop in beauty and like high volume, low price point verticals, like from what I've heard, is massive. I think the only thing is, I think a lot of our clients, where they're slightly more premium, a lot of that revenue seems to be driven by pretty heavy discounting. So I feel like not loads of our clients have gone all in on it. We've had a couple, and yeah, I think one of them are doing some fairly good revenue through it. But the thing I would say is TikTok as a whole, I feel like not necessarily just TikTok, because I feel like most of our clients are still very reliant on Meta. And they don't want to be reliant on Meta. They just can't scale anything else to the same level. I would say TikTok style content. So I'd say bigger than everything I've said is the biggest in this episode, which is quite a few things. Topic amongst our clients, definitely social creative. Like the amount of time and effort that goes into that nowadays is like crazy, and it's obviously like the biggest influencer of results in paid social, everything else. I feel like that organic TikTok content, like the UGC, the scrappy videos, the staff generated content, all that kind of stuff is now performing super well, and even the luxury brands are building that style of content. So I feel like kind of TikTok first content is a big trend. And then I feel like in terms of proportions, I believe our average client is like 50% Meta, or like 50-60% Meta, 40 to 50% Google, and then like 10% TikTok. But it's still like a really growing channel. I feel like everyone's trying to nail that style of organic as well, and kind of integrate organic and paid. So I think everything you're saying I agree with. It's probably just that I think maybe fashion's a bit behind, and I feel like that style of TikTok content is just being applied to both Instagram and TikTok.
Interesting. Yeah, 'cause in a lot of the business I'm talking to, people are, I guess it's not about that they're stopping doing what they're doing in Meta at Google, but they see growth opportunities in TikTok as a more exciting and I guess potentially lower cost route to scale, but off of a smaller base, we'll see. Yeah, interesting. So that is our state of the industry. We've covered a few topics. Hopefully it's been interesting to people. Let us know what have been the big things that you've picked out for 2025. Anything that we said that you don't agree with, you're seeing something different, do let us know. And keep your ears open for the next pod that's going to drop in a week or so around our expected trends of 2026.
You're listening to the Inside Commerce podcast hosted by experienced consultants James Gerd and Paul Rogers. Inside Commerce is your fast track to digital knowledge, featuring interviews with leading e-commerce retailers, industry thought leaders, and the C-suite of key tech companies to explore the latest in digital strategy, customer experience, and tech. Discover what the latest trends really mean and get practical advice based on experience to help fine-tune your e-commerce strategy and tech stack. Follow us on LinkedIn and reach out to James or Paul if you'd like to discuss an e-commerce project. We hope you enjoy the latest episode.